You're at the Coaching Inn, 3D Coaching's virtual pub, where we enjoy conversations with people who are engaged in the world of coaching.
Hello and welcome to this week's edition of the Coaching Inn. I'm your host, Claire Pedrick, and today I'm in conversation with Tatjana Harttung, who I met on a call with Ruth Davey from Look Again.
Absolutely.
And Tatjana runs a company called the Human Greenhouse. So she had to come, right? So welcome, Tatjana.
Thank you. I'm delighted to be here. And I'm glad the technology works, right? There's always a bit of a mystery when we get onto these things.
Indeed. So tell us about your journey to starting the Human Greenhouse.
Oh my God. Yeah. How long have you got?
Give us the 3-minute version.
3-minute version. Exactly. Yes, that one. Well, essentially, when I think about my life, when I think about my path and my own journey, it's always been about other people, right? It's been the red thread throughout my working life. My interest has been a curiosity around how are people made up? You know, what makes a person? What's the dynamic between people? How do things work in systems with people? So it's very much been a people angle. And I have worked in a number of different things related to people: account management, operational management, consulting management, HR, all sorts of things. And during Corona, which is the sort of most recent shift, I guess, I was sitting at home and thinking, okay, I can sit here and I can continue working, 10 plus hours a day, actually in a job that I enjoyed, but also in a role that was maybe a bit more narrow in terms of scope or what I was getting into. And I had a real desire to try out and for myself, try to see whether that sort of entrepreneurial spirit that I have in my body could actually come out and do something. So I decided during Corona, during lockdown, if not now, when? And then I sort of mulled over what to call the business and started just word mapping and, going into dream time and all sorts of things to try and figure out what should it be. And I'm green fingered. I love the color green. I love gardens, greenhouses, all sorts of things. And then I thought, okay, what is it that we do in a greenhouse? We actually, to use the metaphor of nature, we are nurturing soil and tending plants. And I thought, well, hang on a minute. It's like that with human beings, that our foundations need to be strong. We need the right conditions, light, air, love, other people. In order to flourish. So yeah, that's why it's called the Human Greenhouse.
Wow.
And yeah, I do a number of different things on my own and with other people. So coaching and therapeutic dialogue is at the center of that. So both from an individual and a team perspective. I do leadership development as well in all sorts of different guises and facilitation. And then I try to also sort of mix it up a bit and not be too prescriptive, which I know sometimes for people is maybe a bit confusing. But for me, it's really important to understand what's at the core of a request from people that I work with. What's it really about? So to try and bring that curiosity in. So yeah, and it's a big week. I just moved into a co-working space with 3 other female entrepreneurs, which is amazing. So I got out of my little guest bedroom.
Wow.
And into the middle of town where I live, and that's lovely. So I'm unpacking, hence the joy at the technology working today, because this is the first time I'm actually logging on to Riverside from my new digs.
Well, welcome to your real life greenhouse.
Yeah, thank you. There's lots of plants here, by the way.
That's great. Are they fresh roses behind you?
No, they're not. They are super fake, but they have traveled with me in every office I've had in the last, 10 plus years. So they come along for the ride, as does Edna in the back here.
She from The Incredibles?
She is from The Incredibles. The story with Edna is that I have a very dear colleague, or former colleague in the US called Nancy. And Nancy and I were working through a very big project when we worked together in a former industry. and decided that Edna would be a role model because she is feisty, she's a bit of a trickster, she's honest, and
Nice.
she's very brave and very loving. And yeah, so Edna. So we have one each. And when we get on the phone together, Edna's in the background. So
Oh,
Edna
how
had to come
lovely.
along for the ride. And that's also me, right? I do a lot of executive work with different teams and groups. And I am also multi-passionate and super nerdy and a Star Wars fan and all sorts of
Fun.
stuff. Yeah.
I want to talk about your bookshelf in a minute, but just tell us a little bit about your journey into coaching and therapy.
Yeah. So the journey into coaching really happened when I worked in global HR, and I was beginning to coach. I didn't have any formal training, and I thought it's too big a responsibility to just wing it and have conversations. And I wanted it. It's very important for me to have my craft in order, right? That I know what I'm doing, and I have done the due diligence, and also worked with myself for that matter. So a friend of mine recommended the OCM in the UK. So that's where I went for my advanced diploma in coach mentoring, and that has really been a gift. I think it was maybe, at least that was my impression. I was here in Denmark, so I traveled to the UK to do it, but I loved that it was so holistic. And actually, one of my former teachers at the school, Catherine Long, is someone that I am very much connected with today. But that was a real foundation, and from that grew obviously a coaching approach to life, to people, to the work, a career in coaching. And then from a therapeutic perspective, I worked for a consultancy in Copenhagen doing psychometric assessments before I went independent. And I would find myself asking questions of people and seeing them really surface trauma. And we worked very psychodynamically in that business. And I went to my boss at the time, who was a clinical psychologist, and said, I need some level of training. My coaching training isn't deep enough in the mechanics and the dynamics of psychology. And going back to do a full, psychologist degree was just not an option at the time. And there are some really well-renowned schools in Denmark that do psychotherapy where you can still maintain your job, and then have clients and do your own therapy on the side. So I went to something called ID Academy, and that's an integral psychotherapy approach. So it's very holistic. And a lot of it is sort of spiral dynamics, systems thinking, gestalt. It's a mix of things. A lot of Ken Wilber, so it's quite broad in its approach, but very deep. And did that and graduated with that, and that has obviously also taken the conversations in a slightly different direction, because I sit in that space where, and I'm sure you experience this as well, that I am aware of the differences, if you like, between coaching and therapy, but very often some of the coaching has therapeutic themes. So it's nice to have that additional angle, or that additional toolbox, to be able to contract with people and say, hey, this might warrant looking at a little bit closer. Are you okay if we, pull some things out of the tool bag that might support that conversation, so that we can also move forward in what we're here to do, what we've contracted to do, vis-a-vis the business coaching or whatever it might have been, theme-wise. So yeah, and that's a never-ending journey of learning and understanding how much you don't know once you get into it.
Yeah.
But it has been quite profound, and it's also been profound, and I think anyone that does even coaching qualifications, we go deep for ourselves as well, right? We get to look at our own shadows and our own assumptions, our own biases, and that's been really valuable.
I was going to ask you how you navigate the difference, and you described that so very beautifully clearly. This might merit something deeper.
Yeah. It's always by invitation. For me, it's always by invitation. Yeah. Anything that I do is by invitation, of course. It's incredibly important to me that I try and hold space that doesn't do harm. unintentionally. And yes, we can never guarantee that fully, but that is one of the things that I talk to people very earnestly about upfront is I also need to know if we're going down a path that somehow is traumatizing or difficult for you. And then I have, the odd business coaching arrangement where it's coaching because that's on the bill to the organization, and really it's therapy, but people are maybe not ready to call it that and to be open about that, which is a shame because I've been in therapy right throughout my my course, and it is one of the best things that you can do for yourself. It's incredibly illuminating and loving and sometimes difficult as well, but a gift, a real gift.
Yeah. So I have to say it because on your bookshelf is a book
Yes.
that I'm reading right at the moment.
Yeah.
So you can say you haven't read it. That's okay.
Which one are you reading?
Belonging, Not Othering. Or
I've just
Belonging
started
Without
it.
Othering.
I have just started it. It was recommended to me by a friend. I've literally just started it. I'm going on leave for a few days next week. I am bringing it with me. Yeah. And that one came to me. I was looking for, I'm part of sort of regenerative leadership circles, and I was looking for more narrative around what is the piece around belonging that we have not addressed yet in terms of the bigger picture.
Yeah.
And I'm very interested in attachment theory myself, and I think I come up very often not against, but I encounter very often different degrees of othering. And I have a master's in ethics and values in organizations as well. And one of the things that I find is that there is this landscape of moral high ground, and yet we are still othering other people. We are categorizing them. We are defining what they can be and should be, and where they belong or don't belong. Um, and there's so much interesting literature around that, but I was looking for it more in the context of the dialogue space, the coaching space. There's lots of literature. Sigmund Bauman has written a book, Others at Our Door, which is very much in the philosophy vein. And because I actually believe in pretty radical inclusion in all forms in life, and I find it really difficult at this point in time where we are in the world to look at the level of othering that's going on. Yeah, I find that quite heartbreaking, actually.
Yeah.
So yeah, that is why I'm reading that book right now.
Yeah. I'm just starting part 2.
Are you? Oh, okay. Yeah, we'll
So
have
the first
to.
half is all about othering, and then the second half is about belonging.
It's about belonging. Yeah.
But it was interesting because somebody posted a LinkedIn post about a guy who wants 1,000 men. I think it was 1,000 men to empower 1,000 young men in work.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought it's interesting, isn't it? Because there are privileged men, but actually there's a whole sector of young men who have been othered.
Oh, definitely.
And it just, I don't know, there's something about the language that, well, I'd love to have another conversation when you finished it, see what you think.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I think it's very true. I think we very often end up othering without realizing we're doing it.
Yeah.
I was talking to a very dear friend of mine yesterday who's neurodiverse, and we were talking about when we talk about inclusivity and diversity, we are very often forgetting the neurodiverse community. We are othering the elderly. We are othering, young people or people that are a different color to us. And I'm very conscious myself that I am a privileged European middle class white woman. So I come with a whole bag of privileges as it is. But how can I maybe with that space bring some of these topics up?
Yeah. I'm reading it
That's the activist side.
Yeah. So far they haven't talked about neurodiversity at all, but that is actually why I'm reading it, because I'm writing about it.
Yeah. I think it's incredibly important, and I think it's important that that we also talk about what are the gifts with that, what are the strengths with that, and how do those of us that either don't know that we are or are not neurodiverse, how do we also engage with and support those of our fellow friends and family and colleagues who are neurodiverse? I mean, I have neurodiverse friends that are the most enriching, creative, amazing. So there's a real gift there. But I also realize that there are things that are maybe difficult. You know, transitions is typically one, right?
I'm neurodivergent.
Yeah, exactly.
And yeah, the benefit is great and the cost is high.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, interesting. I've lost my question. I want to talk to you about regenerative leadership.
Yes.
But there was something else that just came out there around othering, which I've completely lost.
That's all right. We'll find it. It'll wheedle its way back.
So you met Ruth Davey,
Who's
been a guest at the Coaching In around Look Again, and I've just remembered the thing.
Yeah, go for it.
That's gone again. So we had an open table at the Coaching In about 3 weeks ago, where we had 4 of us were talking about safety and courage in coaching.
Yeah.
And one of them said you can't declare a space safe.
Mm-mm.
You also can't declare a space inclusive, of course, can you? Because actually that is in itself othering, because it's saying, I'm saying this is safe. I'm saying this is inclusive, and it isn't. So I just wanted to kind of drop that in.
Yeah, no, I think that's very true. I think it is. I think it's incredibly important that, you know, when I talk about I'd like to have a space that feels safe for others to be in, it is very much them that decide whether that is spaceful, safe, inclusive, whether they can be vulnerable. I don't get to dictate that at all.
Exactly.
And as a practitioner, you know, we can also be in spaces that all of a sudden start to feel unsafe. So I think I think it's a moving thing. I think it is something that we are continuously having to be honest and have courage around with our clients to talk about, you know, how is this? Is this you know, good enough for now, safe enough to try? Is this where we can be together right now? Because it is dynamic, and it's no, we can't declare a space safe ever.
Absolutely. And I just want to say to our listeners, from building on what you've just said, is that sometimes you'll feel that you'll experience your training or development space as a coach as unsafe.
Yes.
And you're not making that up.
Yes. No, absolutely. No. If it feels unsafe or not right, it is. Yeah. The body keeps the score. Absolutely. And it's funny you say that, because I remember sitting in a session with a coaching supervisor. This was years and years ago. Today, let me just say that I have the most amazing supervisor that I love. But I remember sitting in supervision feeling extraordinarily unsafe all of a sudden. There was an underlying, what my body perceived to be an underlying malice that was disguised as concern. And everything in my system was just tingling. And so I ended the session and said, I'm not feeling well, I need to go. And then I cancelled the agreement. So yeah, it feels unsafe, it is unsafe.
Yeah, absolutely.
As all things in life, right? It's not just in the coaching space, it's everywhere. Yeah, and when you know something about right, then you know it.
Yeah, and there's something about owning that, isn't it? And not going, I must be being weird today.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And, you know, I'll be perfectly honest. I have had years in corporate life where at times I swallowed my own sense of unsafety or lack of safety or my own concerns. And I don't do that anymore. That's been part of my healing, is to say, no, this is not good for me. But I didn't always do that. And I see a lot of people that don't do it in my practice. And of course, we get the clients we need, right? It's always like that. But I do talk about it because I see that it has an impact, not just emotionally and mentally, but also physically. People get ill from it.
Yeah. So back to my question from ages ago.
Back to regenerative leadership.
Tell us about regenerative leadership, Tatjana.
So it's a word that has a certain buzz right now, and that's good in the sense that it's sort of spreading the word of something that's always been there. But at the same time, I think it has the risk of just becoming another thing, right? Being commoditized, being overused, all that sort of stuff. But when I was in corporate, my sense was that there's something that is fundamentally broken here, that are making talented, wonderful, lovely people not work very well together, or get ill, or stuckness in the system, lots of different things. And then I read Giles Hutchins and Laura Storm's book, Regenerative Leadership, which is a huge recommendation to read it. And every page I was turning, I had that sense of, okay, that's what I'm sensing. Okay, so that's why. So there was this whole sort of, it was just the most enormous light bulb that went off in my head. And I wanted to join the course in 22 and wasn't able to at the time, also because I was in the middle of a degree and Corona, and I was like, that's too much. And then I joined the cohort in 23, and there was a year sort of online teachings and webinars and meetings, a very beautiful community. And about 40 of us from the two cohorts that had gone through decided to meet in the UK, and Ruth was part of that. And Ruth and I found ourselves in a group with a couple of other lovely people trying to sort of gently plan one of the sessions in the 5 days that we were together in Devon. And yeah, I mean, how can you not love Ruth? That was instant. I was like, oh, there's a woman after my heart. So we are friends. We talk about kind of collaboration stuff. I have her certification as well, which I love and I use with clients really effectively. So I guess what we're both of us are trying to do is to think regeneratively in the sense of using the principles of nature, right? What is the logic of life? What are the things that inherently create flow and thrivability? Where do we not need to grind and push and do all of those sort of things? And also to think about how can we be good ancestors? What is it that we're leaving behind for next generations? So it's a way of thinking about things, a way of trying to create some cracks and shed some light on things that need to be done better, and not in a very sort of capitalistic, extractive form. And I know that the minute we say, the ills of capitalism, people go, yeah, but you have a business and you make money. Yes, that's true, but we've always traded. We've always had, exchange of goods and services. It's the extractiveness and the willful blindness to the harm that we're doing in sort of, mega structures around the world. I mean, look at where we are today. A lot of that is because of that we are extractive, that we think that nature is infinite. We can just plug all the resources, that we treat human beings as commodities. And I mean, that started with slavery, that we are othering in every sense of the word. You're either on the inside or you're on the outside. And that's very much also a feature of corporate life. If you haven't drunk the Kool-Aid, then you don't belong. So it is to try and see where is an organizational system or a group of people resourceful in themselves. Where can we help people find agency? What are some of the methodologies or modalities that we can employ that have a root in nature? What does nature do, right? She converses and convenes. She doesn't have any waste. She's using resources well. She's thinking about, cradle to cradle. There is no rushing in nature. Everything arrives at the right time. I very often use the metaphor of soil. Unless your soil, metaphorically and in life, by the way, unless your soil is healthy, there are a lot of things that are not going to go well. So how do we talk about that? How do we get you away from thinking that you have to work a 12-hour day and then go home and get back on the computer? That is not regenerative. From a biological perspective, the stress you are inducing in your body will shorten your telomeres and you will get ill. That's in your genes. That's the DNA. Your relationships would suffer because you have no time. Your adrenaline will be high, your cortisol, everything in your body will be on alert. So how do we work with some of the principles of not just because sustainability is kind of leaving it where it is. Regenerative is leaving it better. And there are so many beautiful people working in small islands of coherence that are trying to invite a conversation around, what does that mean? And I'm by no means an expert. I was talking on one of my podcast episodes with Charlie, who's also in this space and knows Ruth as well. And, we are still learners. We are Padawans. This isn't experthood. Giles and Laura are, but they've also been at this for, 20 plus years. I just spent the weekend in a Chai Chi resort retreat with John Milton, who's one of the sort of founding ecologists of the US in the US, and he's still learning, and he's 86, I think.
Yeah.
But I think it is about sensing and longing for a different way of us being in the world.
Mm.
And when I turn on the news, I see that very much being needed, and not to sort of sound depressed about that, but I think now's the time. And we have the technology, we have the wisdom, we have everything. We just need to get it, sometimes, disrupt some of that.
So what does that look like in your work, Tatjana?
It looks like, it depends what it looks like. With individual clients, it is that piece of asking a lot of questions to try and surface both courage and agency in the people that I'm working with, but without holding them as a project. Because I think that's another form of othering, right? That's me thinking that I somehow have to fix or save you, and that's not the case. You are fully capable, fully able, fully everything. What I'm trying to do is help you have enough breath and space in your body and in your soul that you can see your path, and we can begin to travel that together, and you can discover what's available to you. With teams, it's very often it's a combination of the same kind of asking a lot of questions and sometimes pointing a finger at stuff that we don't talk about. Everyone knows it's in the room, but we never talk about it. It's de-weaponizing the language that very often happens in teams. That's a big part of that. And sometimes it's also just allowing them to be with the space in themselves. When we give it back to teams, they find a way. It's also holding space for emotions, for the anger, the frustration, the joy, the crying, whatever it is, it's all welcome. And then it's the podcast. It is trying to put, like you, right, some voices out there to talk about how do we find some voice and some agency. So there is a side of me that also I can sense my own activist sort of, stirring.
Yeah. So what's your podcast called?
It's called The Human Greenhouse, like
Of course
the business.
it is.
Yeah. Yeah.
Great.
And that was an experiment, or is an experiment, from the perspective of wanting to give some voice to some people that have some really beautiful thoughts and big hearts, and that are trying to find their own way, and it's fairly eclectic, and that suits me fine. But that's also evolving, right? It's always changing, always evolving, as these things are.
Yeah, because our lovely listeners respond, have opinions,
yes,
say, what about this?
Exactly. Yeah. And you get lovely notes saying, oh, what if you talked about this? And I have a question about that, which is fantastic. So, yeah.
How long's your podcast been going?
About a year now.
Oh, nice.
So still early days, but that's good.
Yeah.
It's fun. It's really fun. So we're having a little summer break, and then we get going again in September.
Lovely.
So I'm in that lovely process of trying to birth a new season, and thinking about what else is there, and what are some of the conversations, surfacing in terms of what needs to come on next. Yeah.
Half our listens are of old episodes.
Yeah.
Which
is lovely.
Which fascinates me.
Yeah.
Because there's something about, is this live? No, it isn't actually. People listen to past episodes.
Yeah. No, I get that as well. I get people sort of, sending me messages saying, I listened to that episode, 3 times and I'm finding something new every time. And, that one made a difference. And that is always incredibly wonderful to hear from people. And also to hear if, I had this was a colleague of mine in the industry who sent me a message saying, I love that episode, but I think you could get a bit more tough with your guest. I was like, yeah, I hear you. Okay. Yeah. But there was one of those days where that wasn't in my space.
Yeah, nice. So the Human Greenhouse is your podcast. And if people
Yes.
want to talk to you, how do they get in touch?
So the website, thehumangreenhouse.com, is where they can find me. Also, I'm on LinkedIn.
Okay, brilliant.
And I am trying to build my Instagram profile, but that is something that I just need a little space with. And then I have an emergent Substack as well.
Yeah, me
Oh,
too.
Yeah. It's one of those things of staying focused and not sort of losing yourself across 10
Yeah.
platforms. And then
Absolutely.
I find it really I find it really interesting when other people are posting things as well. So
Yeah, I'm using
Yeah.
Substack to post half-written thoughts and then get comments on
Yes.
them. So it's just, so rather than having a document with a half-written thought
Yeah.
or an unfinished thought, I just pop them in
I
Substack.
actually think I was talking to a friend of mine about this yesterday. I think it's so important at the moment that I will say I am a recovering perfectionist by heart, but that we just try and do things imperfectly. There's too much out there that somebody has put through an AI engine, and it's like ghost language. It feels dead. It feels otherworldly, and I love it when someone's just going, oops, I was posting something, or they get online somewhere and it's not quite perfect, and then the dog barked or whatever. Then it feels human again.
Yeah,
as opposed to the sort of robotic nature of well-polished AI.
absolutely. So the Human Greenhouse podcast, and all of those links will be in the show notes.
Lovely.
Thank you, Tatjana, for coming to the Coaching In.
Thank you for having me. It was lovely. Thank you so much.
And everyone, thank you for listening, and we'll be back next week with another episode. Bye-bye.
Bye.
If you've enjoyed what you've heard today, we'd love you to share the podcast with a friend or leave a comment on social media. And if you'd like to become a regular at the Coaching In, you can subscribe on Podbean and all major podcast channels. We look forward to welcoming you next time. You've been listening to The Coaching In, 3D Coaching's virtual pub. For more information, check out 3dcoaching.com.